So, welcome back to the podcast. I am thrilled today to have Marie-Josée Bourassa back on the podcast. She, if you haven't listened to episode 58, she is the founder and manager of the Méno-Joie Clinic, which is right here in Montreal. The aim with the clinic is to help women who are suffering through the transition of menopause and offer them a safe environment that prioritizes compassionate medicine. And as I said, this is Marie-Josée's second time on the podcast. So I've invited her back to discuss the topic of intimacy in midlife and the various physical and emotional obstacles that can show up at this time. So I know this is an area that's concerning to many women right now, and even women who aren't yet perimenopausal. Women are wondering what will happen to my libido and my body and my sex life once I'm menopausal. So I'm really happy that Marie-Josée is here on the podcast to talk about this. It can sometimes be an uncomfortable topic, so I'm really happy to have somebody to talk it through with. So, Marie-Josée, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Debbie, for having me one more time. It's so exciting. And if we can debunk together through this conversation an ease or an attempt to have more ease with the permission for women to have a healthy intimacy, going through this transition, as we said, perimenopause starting anywhere from 35 on, and then menopause hitting on average at 51 and beyond. There's a whole lifespan on this journey that intimacy is a fundamental part of a woman's health.
Yeah, it is. It is, and it's sometimes something we don't put a lot of emphasis on, but it really does affect our quality of life. So
Yes.
I think it's such an important topic, and I'm so happy to be openly discussing it today. So to start off, I just want to know with the hormonal changes that we're having as we
Mhm.
enter perimenopause and go into menopause, um, what is the impact on our, let's say, libido and our sexual function? What are the impacts that we
Mhm.
should be aware of?
It's a very good question, Debbie. It's a bit of a, as we had discussed, and if ever there's any research of what type of symptoms that women can experience with these fluctuations of hormonal changes, going back to, I call them the feminine sexual hormones with regards to our ovaries that do secrete these hormones. Women do produce also testosterone, right? The three champions that I call them, we have the two dominant hormones of estradiol and progesterone, but there's testosterone in for women also, and this like we're hearing more and more about it. But there's definitely a key to having a safety approach to those type of hormones that can be supplemented. So if we go from the beginning, the fluctuations of these hormones can bring you a bit of a, I like to use the example like a Cracker Jack option of in a box, and you don't know what's going to pop out for yourself, Debbie, or myself going through these stages, or another woman. And when we meet women at the clinic, for example, every story is unique because you can have a bit of this, a bit of that. We're talking about intimacy, libido, all of this today because it's such a common thread. It comes out a lot for women. And we think it's a blockage from our head, our emotions, timeline in our couple. Some women go through journeys of separation and they might have an opportunity to meet somebody else. So, hormonally, the changes will affect, but we have to make sure we understand that it will have an impact that can challenge, make it more difficult for a woman to have intimacy, desire. Like, I think we need to start from the desire, envy, of having even personal intimacy. I think one key thing maybe we'll come back to together, Debbie, is it has to start with self. There has to be acceptance, fantasy, being able to have a zone of comfort with ourself for self-care, self-intimacy, and then looking at more in the relationships with sexuality, healthy sexuality. So the hormones will play a role for sure, but often women will think it's in my head. There's something wrong with me. There's a bit of shame that can occur. And then after that is just, we think it's done. It's dead. There's no more. Ain't happening. So there's a lot of step by step to go through. And I always tell women, let's start by making sure, are you sleeping? Are you eating well? Are you moving your body? Then obviously you'll want to say, okay, we'll talk about libido. It is rare that a woman will come in and discuss saying, my top priority is my libido is disappeared or there's none. there's a lot around it. That's the holistic approach. Does that make sense, Debbie? Where I'm going with that?
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. Yeah,
yeah,
it's not so simple, and there's a lot of it,
no,
like you said, that sounds like issues that we might have had even before we get to this point. So body image issues can
yes.
be huge. How we see ourselves, desire, those are things that might even before we even get to perimenopause might start being an issue, so that we should be aware of, because once we do have that hormone fluctuation, things can get worse.
A little bit
So
more challenging. Yes.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And what about the physical symptoms um of having this hormone drop?
Yes.
How are some women experiencing that as well?
When we concentrate more, like again, I was just mentioning, like obviously sleep can be a definite issue that can lead to fatigue, that can lead to mood changes or fluctuations that then lead to the emotional contact. Another big one can be a little bit of a weight gain that I know you've discussed a lot, Debbie. This like 5 to 7 kilo weight gain that happens for the majority of women in this transition without having changed anything. So, body image, as you're mentioning, is so important. But if we get down to the nitty gritty, to the actual sexual organs, the actual vulva, vaginal canal, with the lack of estradiol, which is your master hormone, once again, there is for many, many women a vaginal dryness that can manifest itself. And when that occurs, okay, so we're going through layers and layers and layers. But if we get down to the act of having sexual intercourse or personal intimacy, and there's pain, for example,
Hmm.
burning, for example, thinning of the mucosa, pain with penetration, for example, that kind of triggers a woman to say, ain't happening, because the pain is physical and it's true and it can definitely be assessed and you will see. Not to go into too much detail, but when there's burning, it's a sense of having micro fissures, like little abrasions that occur that are microscopic, but that can cause the swelling, a little bit of um, not discharge, but more like a little bit of a bleeding that can actually occur. So this is pretty serious business that will turn off anybody who's trying to get back into a sense of intimacy. And there's preparation for that. And there's definitely, when I say preparation, prevention for there to be treatment in place before going down that road. Um, and often, Debbie, it is too late, because too late in the sense women are coming for help where crap, the dryness is really installed, and atrophy, maybe I can define that for you, Debbie, is really like
Hmm.
a certain shrinkage, a certain restriction with regards to the passage of the vaginal canal. So it's as if uh, there is a difficulty with passage, right, in that sense.
Okay.
Um, so that can install itself with the decrease of the hormones, primarily estradiol in the vagina, in the vulva as well. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Wow. Yeah, that I can, yeah, definitely understand why that would be something that would really decrease your sexual activity and make you not even be interested in having sex.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
once you get to that point, what can you do in terms
I
of,
think
like, are there treatments for that? Are there products you can use for that?
yes.
What would you suggest?
What I suggest, I think we need to take it back, like backtrack a little bit, Debbie, because as you know, my mindset of a healthcare professional that I am, there's prevention that always comes in first, and
Hmm.
then we'll promote the health. So prevention is obviously regular hygiene, physical activity, because blood irrigation is so important, especially in that zone of our bodies. So that for sure, in regards to prevention, is your health habits that needs to be, you know, keep going on that front. And then promotion of health. I think it's important to understand, not to make any joke about it, but many gynecologists will say you use it or you lose it. In the
Yeah.
sense we're talking about our lower body, which is intimate arousal. There's pleasure when there is orgasm. There is a sense of endorphins that are released. It compensates. It's a bit like a equals to stress release right away. And that's why I think it starts with self-care once again, with regards to um, recognizing a certain gratitude towards your body, no matter which shape or size that you are, how, your mobility counts as well. But I think it starts with that sense of self-care and self-intimacy. If I can definitely
Mhm.
recommend that. And there is no shame. There is no shame. Your own privacy is so important. And women don't necessarily talk about that amongst themselves, but my message to them, whoever is listening, is there is nothing shameful. And if that's a blockage, there's definitely resources to support you, from psychotherapy to going and trying to iron out the past, depending on how you are, what's going on with your relationship to yourself in your past, but also the current relationship or celibacy, or even women have experienced loss, unfortunately, of a partner, right? So those are
Mhm.
all impacts that are psychological, and there's support for that. So reaching out for help. And then if we go down to the more physical aspects, Debbie, there is definitely, I call it like a three-step process. So when there is already signs of dryness, there are over-the-counter products, not to name any, but you're looking at bases of moisturizers. So vaginal moisturizers exist and they are safe. You just want to look on the labeling, and you can speak to your pharmacist. At the clinic, we will prescribe, but you actually don't even need a prescription for these type of products. So a product that will contain hyaluronic acid, I'm saying that right, that's always a tongue twister,
Yes.
and vitamin E base are forms of moisturizers. They hydrate the mucosa. So usually they're made with an applicator. It's a cream base, and there's a protocol to follow. You do a treatment. I mean, it's more individual, but there's standards of care with regards to these products. So we're looking at nothing that is highly chemical, nothing that is with odor, perfume, and something that is hypoallergenic. Am I saying that correctly? Yeah.
Yep, yep.
Those are what you're looking at, your key check marks to validate when you pick up the product. Of course, if you need support, you can definitely speak with a healthcare professional or your provider, but a moisturizer is your step one, right?
Okay. Is
Yeah,
that
if you're
something you, when you're talking about moisturizer, that's something you would use not only before you have sex, it's just something you would do on the daily? Is that,
On the daily,
yeah.
customarily, Debbie, we're looking at a moisturizer when there's a sign of certain vaginal dryness that you would do for 2 weeks, a little bit every day, and then you could recommend twice a week onwards. And it really will moisturize. And for some women, the dryness will disappear entirely.
Wow.
Really. So
Okay.
I think that's important. For a woman who's not experiencing any form of vaginal discomfort or dryness, you don't need those products just yet. But when you first have a little bit of burning, itching is another sign. I mean, this it can occur. Those are signs of certain levels of dryness. So speaking with a healthcare professional, if you're wondering, is there something? There should be no change in odor. There should be no discharge. There should not be any
Yeah.
mucousy discharge. Like these are things that are important as a myself informing women to say, okay, take the time to assess, take the time to look, feel,
Yes.
right? Our five senses really play a big ally in our knowledge, right?
Mhm.
So those are the things to look out for. So moisturizer, step one, the minute there are signs. And just for the sake, as I don't promote any specific product, speaking with the pharmacy is important, pharmacist, sorry, and
Yes.
healthcare professional. And that's a first line of treatment, the moisturizer. Number two,
Okay.
Debbie, is the non-negotiable one. I always tell women you cannot have any personal intimacy or intercourse with your partner without a lubrication. Lubrication is your step number two. And I always recommend, it's really a personal choice, a glycerin base or a water base lubricant. And again, we're looking at an investment of a good product for yourself, um, with regards to odorless, low in chemical, something that doesn't wear right after application, right? We can be, it should not be a blocker in your intimacy. It's part of the foreplay. You have to envision that. And lubrication is the non negotiable. That's how I always say it. So prevention and promotion with the moisturizer,
Yes.
hyaluronic acid, vitamin E base. If you're more like natural products, you can find some in a store that provides natural products. For others, like I have women that have told me this is evidence based as well. They'll use almond oil or they'll use coconut oil. Okay, so
Yes.
see,
Yes.
those
I
are
personally have
natural
used
forms.
coconut oil.
Coconut
Yes.
oil, that's it. Honestly, there's evidence and research even for cancer survivors who usually vaginal dryness atrophy can hit hard on their bodies. Those are the very safe first routes to go with lubrication and some form of moisturizing. But if we stick to back to the three steps, would be
Hmm.
moisturizer, lubrication, non-negotiable, and
Yeah.
use it. When I say you don't want to lose the ability of sensation. I mean, all women deserve to have an orgasm, to have pleasure, to have a release of stress. It's part of our
Oh,
our life experience. It's a joy. We should have gratitude, not wanting to sound too funky here. I'm not a sexologist. I'm not a sexologist, Debbie, but as a holistic healthcare provider, it's part of the sphere of emotions, auto-regulation,
yeah.
and definitely benefits our, you know, the science of happiness. Healthy sexual activity is definitely part of that, and there's no shame,
Yeah.
right?
And I think just the thought that we can have pleasure, like it
Yes.
exists for a reason. Like we weren't given this for no reason. So
Yeah,
obviously it's to use and experience. And I know this is a very
100%.
uncomfortable thing for women to
It
talk
is.
about, perhaps like self-pleasure. And we always just talk about it in terms of with a partner, but
Yeah.
yeah, self-pleasure is so important. Like you said, like you use the term blood irrigation, like it's actually
Yes.
like bringing blood to the area, which is so
Yeah.
healthy. I mean, for
Yeah.
everything, for every part of
It's
us,
a
I would
necessity.
assume, yeah, that's it. Like it can
Debbie, it's a
help
necessity,
prevent
really.
things like vaginal dryness and issues and of pain, I would imagine, if
Yeah.
you have regular orgasms.
That's right. That's right. And that's very personal, but to have none or like years and years, I meet women years like and
Yeah.
even like you know we were talking before about signs and symptoms, but I do meet women that they haven't had a pap test to be able to assess cytology cells at the cervix level as a prevention with regards to just health assessments for years, Debbie, due to the fear of having anything inserted or assessed or things like that. So that's our, I think, a message on, again, going back to prevention. Maybe I can explain to you the last step of the trio that I was
Yeah,
explaining
yeah.
about between moisturizer, lubrication,
Lubricate.
the last line of treatment, which is an extremely safe method. Going back to, you've heard me say this many times, how uh, hormones are safe for the majority of women, and definitely at a local level, at a vulva and vaginal level, to have treatment with a cream or capsule of estrogen will heal and prevent like dryness. So, severe dryness, beginning of dryness, menopause. It's a journey, right? And it's not a
Hmm.
status that we should qualify as a one day, it's for life afterwards. And going back to the motto, having an active, healthy sex life. Uh, like I met a patient, to be honest, no disclosure, but there's a patient that came in 72, and when you come through the questionnaire and we talk about libido and is there any pain with intercourse, is she sexually active? You should have seen her eyes, Debbie. They just the spark up. She goes, "Oh yes, I'm good on that front." Right. So I found that so it's kind of a relief and a
Yes.
sense of hope in regards to it doesn't need to die. We don't need to stop at that level, but we want to make sure we're safe and that we're comfortable and that there's no
Yes.
shame, obviously. So, just to wrap up on those three steps, the estrogen base treatment, that's a prescribed treatment, is accessible with any provider. We definitely care for women. It's a standard of practice, Debbie. So, there's definitely something to be done. It's not normal to have vaginal
Hmm.
dryness, pain, etc. And then another line of treatment, when it's installed, when it's really not enough to do these three steps, we recommend to do physiotherapy or to use the technology like Emsella, for example, where sexual dysfunctions of pain, or some may have no more sensation. It'd be like it's no matter how much you stimulate, or there's, I'll call it foreplay, and you can't reach a trigger of getting towards a climax, then there are definitely treatments for that as well. And physiotherapy, pelvic floor physiotherapy, and
Mm-hmm.
Emsella treatments are some of treatments that we offer and we recommend women to consult in the region. It's hard to find though. Pelvic floor physiotherapist is
Mm-hmm.
not easy to find,
Well, I know in
unfortunately.
Montreal there's a couple of clinics that
There's a
do
couple great
just
ones.
exclusively pelvic floor physio, which is great. My
It's
daughter's a
great.
physiotherapist, and her roommate is a
Amazing.
pelvic floor physiotherapist. So I know of a couple of places. If anybody needs a referral, I
Yes.
can
Yes.
tell them where to go for
Yes.
that.
Yes. And Debbie, one more thing is to be curious, right? It's
Yeah.
as if I don't know, where am I at? So obviously, self-assessment, asking
Mm.
questions, doing some research. You have to be careful with Dr. Google, I say, go to the source
Yes.
of an evidence-based practice. And then definitely be curious and go for an assessment with a physio or a nurse practitioner to have an assessment and say, how's it going? Sometimes women, no, 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 I have no vaginal dryness. And then you'll do a vaginal exam and you're like, there's vaginal dryness, and we can treat that to prevent injury,
Yes.
right? Yeah.
Yes. It's so
Yeah.
good. And it's so good to know that these resources exist, that there are
Yes.
people out there that are serving women at this for these issues. I just want to go back to the estrogen. When you're talking about estrogen, are you talking about vaginal estrogen, like
Vaginal.
applying it locally, right? To,
Correct.
okay.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. And there's, you need an assessment, obviously, with a healthcare professional, but it is common to have women going through symptoms of menopause that will need a topical form of estradiol that is a systemic treatment so that you'll have an elimination of symptoms, for example, of vasomotor symptoms, those hot flashes, night sweats, bone pain, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There's so many symptoms that can be associated with the lack of estrogen or fluctuating estrogen, but this is a
Yes.
local treatment. And that's
Local
why it's important
treatment.
to speak with your healthcare provider saying, maybe I don't want to take a systemic form, or maybe I'm at risk to take a systemic form of topical, let's say on an arm, on a thigh, or a patch, for example. But you could definitely be eligible through a discussion for a local risk factors. It's like it's quasiment nil. There's like risk factors are so low for any women. I think we're all included in that form of treatment, right? So,
Okay. Oh,
yeah,
that's so
absolutely.
good.
Very safe.
That is so important. So I like that. So those three things again were vaginal moisturizers, which you can
Correct.
start using daily at the first sign of any issue. Non-negotiable would be a good lubricant, and
Yes,
and then the vaginal estrogen, which can help, I guess, heal and get back some sensation that might have been lost.
that's right. That's right. And it's a one more thing we haven't talked about, Debbie, is that once you have a severe case of dryness or going towards something that is quite uncomfortable, there are risk of having genitourinary symptoms that can occur.
Mm-hmm.
And like when we say the percentage as we age, women uh, past the age of 70, 2 out of 3 women will have a certain degree of pretty important your bladder leakages, if we say that term. But that's due to lack of estrogen, for example, or thinning of the mucosa, the structure itself of the body, of your organs will change.
Mm-hmm.
Prolapse is often very common as well. So these are health concerns that can be managed, that can be treated as well. So it
Yeah.
just takes that curiosity and looking into it and asking yourself, am I having any leakages, and when am I having them? Is it
Yeah.
causing am I having recurring UTIs, urinary tract infections? Is that happening? So to
Mhm.
be aware and ask questions to yourself and then get the support you need in that sense. But that is non-negligible, Debbie, that urinary gynecological urinary symptoms can occur can occur. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Okay. And that there are things that we can do to relieve them, which is good to
100%.
know.
Yes, key
So,
message today is address the concerns. Like there is treatment. There's
yes.
no needs to suffer.
Yeah, you just need to ask and and you'll find someone who can help you.
Mhm.
And it's good to know that locally we do have these resources. So I want to go back to body image because I just think this is a huge issue. I think women obviously have body image issues before they get to this time. And it can be even harder because their bodies are changing in ways they don't appreciate.
Right.
So and that can then cause intimacy issues because they don't feel good in their bodies, or they don't feel sexy, or they don't feel attractive, or they just don't feel good just overall.
Right.
So yeah, I'm
Yeah.
just wondering how to address that. How do you address that, and what's the best way to do that?
Best way to do that is that, well, it's definitely a delicate conversation. It's to have with oneself, because, as you mentioned earlier, there could be past trauma, there could be past
Mm-hmm.
issues, growing up, from puberty, body changes, for those women having children, who've had children, body changes there again. But obviously, it makes sense to recognize that a woman won't want to be touched if she's not comfortable with certain aspects of her body, right?
Yeah.
First key thing, definitely to recognize that what is it that you like about your body, and your body is changing. It would be too simple for me to say you got to accept the aging process. To get to that level needs work. You need to work, but it's definitely a symptom of isolation that can occur when a woman is really almost isolated within herself and kind of dissociates from her physical body, right? I was going
Mm-hmm.
back to the five senses, and you're like, you have your, what do you enjoy? What are things that you enjoy? It could be from, what do you like to eat? What do you like to see? What music do you like to listen to? What smells do you like to enjoy in your home? Even in the car, candles, for example, or someone doesn't like candles, they like incense, or they don't like any of the above, but they like fresh linen. Those are the type
Mm-hmm.
of senses that reconnect yourself to your body. Touch, I mean, there's one fundamental thing, Debbie, is it's a fundamental need to feel loved and to give love from the human experience, right? And I'm saying this with very broad knowledge and experience I've had working with women in the past several decades now. So, fundamental recognition that you deserve to feel loved and to receive love, and that you're not alone, and to be able to express that as well, and to use the senses as a sense of opportunity to reconnect if there's been a disconnect. But for those who feel, I'm pretty connected, and yeah, but it depends to what degree the woman is experiencing that for herself. It's quite, we talked about intimacy at a physical level, but there's intimacy almost that needs to be actually with the sense of who we are, who am I, what are my likes, what do I have gratitude for, my hair, my eyes, my smile, and with who do I like to share physical touch. It doesn't have to just be a partner, a hand on a shoulder for a colleague, a hug for a child, a pet, like your pet, your cat,
Mm-hmm.
your dog. That sensation of exchange can be a first start to reconnect with yourself in that sense.
Yeah.
So those are guides to say, this is kind of homework I'm giving people to start with that. It doesn't mean to say, okay, I don't like my body, I don't feel well, I don't even enjoy my partner looking at me, even dressed, I'm not comfortable. There's definitely some homework with regards to digging a bit deeper. What's the trigger? What's the pain coming from? And it could be from past trauma where that needs support from a psychologist, a therapist, because it's deeper, and you don't need to go through that alone, not to lose
Mm-hmm.
yourself in that. So that's
Mm-hmm.
first step for sure. But in the simple pleasures of your day to day, right? Day to day. Some
Yeah.
couples we meet, some women come to the clinic with their partners, and it's so lovely to meet with them together as this engagement of recognition that one of us is struggling, when
It's
partners
so
come in and
beautiful.
having that, oh, it's so beautiful, Debbie. It gives me goosebumps.
Mhm.
And not to, definitely not to identify anybody, but the conversations that come out of that hour assessment. Yes, we'll go through the physical and we'll talk about libido and all of that. But the reconnection of the couple, I always have that a bit of a goal, my personal goal as a healthcare professional to get this couple to reconnect because there's definitely something there, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes, I mean, if it's possible, I often say, is there any way we can prescribe a small vacation for both of you to have a sense of disconnect from the crazy lives we live? And you should see the smiles. Debbie's like, oh, it's true. We haven't had even a date. Like, start with a coffee, start with a date somewhere. That's how
Yes.
easy a couple can disconnect. I think I was telling you earlier how when you identify an issue with yourself, when you're in a couple, and then conflict or isolation and loneliness happens, or maybe for
Mhm.
others, some are more steamed conversation, there's more of a conflict that can arise. Everybody's so different. But to recognize that and get help, the statistic shows that couples will wait up to 7 years to get help. So
Yeah.
I'm
That's
answering your
amazing.
question starting from the individual, but we are meant to be in connection with others, others being many types of relationships. The unique style is the couple, it's so unique as a relationship. And then identifying through this mature uh, health change, this mature, I'll say, woman's health stage in our lives, things change there too and
Yeah.
doesn't have to be monogamous. And there's support. There's good books. I mean, I could recommend. I'm sure you have great ones too, Debbie, just to get the discussion, somebody like Esther Perel, I not to I'm mentioning
Mhm.
her name
Yeah.
because I passed by her podcast recently. And where do we begin?
Yes, it's so good.
It's support to not do it. Don't you love that? I love it
I
too. And
do.
it's like she has a card game, and she's not the only one. There's amazing card games. Yeah, Debbie, you should actually make a card game. I'm just throwing that out there.
Thanks for the idea, Marie-Josée. I
Yeah,
might follow up
absolutely.
on
But
that.
yeah, so I can go on and on, Debbie. Please stop me. But there's just so much. And if there's one thing, is always you always need to have the hope. There's hope.
Yes, there's
It's
always
there.
hope.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I just love everything you've mentioned because it's not sometimes our sexual issues are not stemming in our sexual selves, but just stemming from the self that needs human connection, that needs touch, that needs to understand what we want even or what we like even. Like it could be that fundamental. And I meet a lot of women who don't know anymore what they like what is their favorite food, what is what are the things they like to do. I think that's exactly where it starts. Is like, okay, start connecting with yourself first, figure out who you are, what you want, and then you're going to start feeling things like you said through the five senses, and that will lead you down this road. But I really do believe in what you said, that it starts at that fundamental level, which is
It
so
does. It does. A reconnection with oneself, and we talked about a lot of stuff already with personal intimacy and things like that. It's a step-by-step process. I mean, I meet women that are very active and also active with their personal intimacy. And for others, it's they'll blush and they're in their
mm-hmm.
early, in their 40s and their 50s. And it's like, so you see how everybody's so unique and that's okay. Meet yourself
Yes.
where you're at and to discover a healthy journey down the road to discover something new is actually fun. I really hope that for the women that are listening to us.
Yes, I do too. And I just enjoy that. Yeah, there are no barriers here. Like, there's no definition of any type of relationship you're going to have. There's no definition of how to do this. You're unique. You have your unique journey. And, you have to honor who you are and what you want. And nothing about it is wrong.
Nothing
And I
about it
just,
is wrong. Nothing about
yeah.
it is wrong, especially when you recognize certain thoughts that are quite, I'll say, toxic. Pretty abrupt as a word, but they are.
Hmm.
How to notice that thought occur and be able to say, look at myself. How am I speaking to myself? Am I worth these words? Would I speak to somebody else this way? I know that again, a lot of research done on that, how self-love and self-worthiness is such a process. But for those that it's healthy, we need to say, okay, this is a new life stage of perimenopause, menopause. It doesn't stop there. It continues on the
Yeah,
right way. So yeah, there's nothing wrong. There's definitely always hope. And one thing important too, Debbie, I think you mentioned that as well, is like the journey is short when you think about it, right? When you look at a lifespan, we're living longer and longer.
yeah,
um, we aim at 100 years, like that's pretty amazing life if you want it to be healthy, but it's short. Our journey is
yeah.
short, so we really take conscious of that don't waste the time on the subtle things that really don't sweat the small stuff, but easier
Yeah.
said than done, right, Debbie? Easier said than done.
It is, it
Yeah.
is. But that's why we have to take appointments with ourselves, whether
Mhm.
it's, to connect with ourselves in some way outside of the chaos of what's going on and just find, like, I like the idea, like you said, just taking that small vacation, even if it's alone. I think there's so
Yes.
much to be gained from that, right? And yeah, just getting over our old stories, old limitations, thinking that there's anything wrong or disgusting or or inappropriate about any of
Yeah.
this, I think is so important. We are women in midlife and we can write a whole different story and start living if we
We're
haven't done
living.
this. Yeah.
There's been no expiry date on any one of us, and we actually have a lot of power to
Yeah.
bring it back to life, right? And it's a journey, it's a roller coaster, right? We talked about hormones in the beginning of our conversation, how they fluctuate or they decrease. But when you look at a timeline of your life, it's normal that it's in your couple, with yourself, in your career, with your children, with your family members. It's a roller coaster. But at the end of the day,
Mhm.
like getting back to yourself,
Yeah.
yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, this has been so good. I don't know if you have anything else you want to add to this, but it's been a great conversation with so much good information. Do
Oh,
you
it's
have
such a
anything
pleasure,
else you would
Debbie.
add?
I don't have anything to add. Actually, it's just maybe like everybody that's listening, take a deep breath and try to take in one message of what we spoke about together, and pick one thing and then explore. If you just take one thing and I'm going to give that a try. I'm going to give that a try.
Yeah,
I'm going to purchase
yeah.
that first lubricant, or I'm going to try a different kind, or I'm going to start journaling, or just pick one thing that resonates with you. That would be my last message, because it's a 1 degree change shift at a time. It's one step that can make a difference.
Yes, I love that. I love that. It made me think of this one. I don't know if it was a class I took or I can't remember, but it was way back when where it was just about just touch your arm in a very loving way. Like just touch your
Yeah.
arm, run your fingers up and down it. And it's a very sensual experience that it's so simple, but connects you to yourself, connects you even possibly to your sexuality. And yeah, it just takes one thing you decide to do that can start turning things around for you. So I really appreciate that idea.
It's always a pleasure, Debbie.
Okay, well, thanks so much, Marie-Josée. I'm really glad you were here again, and I hope you'll come back.
Yes, absolutely. We can do a Q&A together if you'd like some time. I'm just throwing it out there. It's been a pleasure. Anything to help and support women.
Yeah, okay, that's so good. Q&A might be the next thing. That would be fantastic. All right, thanks so much.
Thank you.